You're listening to the Sis You Can Do This podcast, and we are your hosts, Roshana
and Melissa. We're faith-driven women who hope to share with you all things lifestyle, wellness, purpose, and of course, Jesus. Thanks in advance for listening.
Hello to all our listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Sis You Can Do This podcast. We have another great topic for you today, and I'm sure you, Melissa, have something up your sleeve.
I do. Hello, everyone. So lovely to see you again. So we have a game that we want to play. So this is called word association, right? So, Ro, I'm going to say a word, and you are going to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Right? So, all right. So the first word is snow.
Cold.
Right? Or snowman.
You want me to expand?
Cold, snow, cold. Yeah, I guess.
Well,
is snow cold, though?
Yeah, because that means winter.
I mean, you think that it's going to be cold, but I don't know. I feel like...
Okay, so usually when it snows, it tends to be a little bit warmer.
That's what I'm saying. It's right before it snows. I find that's when it's cold and you know snow is coming. I don't know from my experience. I don't know if I'm making that up in my head, but...
But I also associate snow to being in the winter season where it's cold.
It's cold. It's a cold time. It's colder.
I'm going to stick with cold.
Okay. All right. Next word, breakfast.
Bagels.
Not eggs, I mean...
I like me a good bagel. I'm a bagel girl, so for breakfast.
You want the jam or the cream cheese?
I'm doing cream cheese. Yeah.
I'm getting to appreciate the jam on it, and then I saw somebody do both.
Yeah, cream cheese and jam can work. If you haven't tried it, don't knock it till you try it. It's actually pretty good. It can be a thing.
It can be a thing. All right, clock.
Time?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm single, so I think biological clock when you say...
Oh, my goodness.
That's the first I'm like,
I just think like clock. It's giving you the time, so...
It's giving you the time.
It's giving you the time.
Right, that's good. Woman.
Man?
That is logical. That is it. Woman, man.
Me? Woman? Me?
You, man,
I guess
right?
Man.
So the first thing that came to your mind when you heard woman is man. That is actually a great segue for our topic today. So it's a heavy topic today. We're talking about faith and feminism.
Ooh, that F word.
That F word, man. So it is an interesting pairing.
Yeah, I have to agree.
So, and it's somewhat controversial, I think, is, because of course we come from a Christian or a faith background, and feminism, there's some elements of it that we would say that is not within our faith line, or it doesn't agree with what we believe, right? So let's start out with a definition for feminism.
Okay.
So according to the dictionary, feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes, right? So it's making the sexes equal in everything. Mm-hmm. And we are going to preface this by saying that we acknowledge and we are aware that there's in some parts of the world, there are still very much women being oppressed. And we stand for women being treated with love and respect and not being abused. And of course, we stand against any injustice that's brought against women. I think it's important to say that because, we live in a Western world and we have a lot of freedoms, even though there are still a lot of things happening.
Right, I agree.
Even in, the space that we live in. But there's some treacherous things happening across the world, and we don't want to diminish that at all as we talk about this topic. So when you hear the word feminism, what comes to mind?
Women doing too much.
Women doing a lot.
But I think that's more taking it into like the negative connotation of feminism. So let me just hold that thought for a moment. But on a real note, I know that it is, about fighting for equal rights. It was about, the right to vote, the right to work back in the day. But now I just feel like it's been taken out of context. It's on a whole another level. This like trying to be a man, trying to be like a man, right over my own body. So it equates to killing babies. There's just so much more to it now than I think what it started off as. And, I was reading an article kind of on feminism, and it was talking about the intersectionality of feminism.
Oh, God.
Because everything has an intersectionality to it, right? Where it now advocates for genders and races and classes and all these things that I just don't know if that's what it really started for. That was the reason behind it, what I was saying, right?
Right. So there's this car that started off with two people, and then out of nowhere, the car, there's people on top of the car, people in the trunk.
All over the car.
Right. All over the car. So for a little background, feminism has had various phases, or what they would consider waves.
Right.
So the first and the second wave of feminism, as you were saying, it had a lot to do with giving women the right to vote, workplace equality, and, understanding that if we're doing the same job, then we should be compensated, similarly, man and woman. And of course, giving women the right to education and, being able to go to whatever heights they want to go to as far as education. And those parts we're okay with, right? We're absolutely in agreement with, women having the right to vote and women having the right to educate themselves. But then that third wave is what I believe you're talking about. That third wave.
I was doing a little research on this. The third wave, fourth wave, fifth. I don't even know what wave we're in, but yes.
Right. So that third wave started off in the early 90s. And this is where we see that there was almost this embracing of rebellion instead of reform. And women were encouraged to express their sexuality and individuality. And that's where that whole intersectional thing started happening. And then of recent times, we have what they would call the fourth wave, which is it's incorporating the digital world that we now live in. There's a lot of things going on social media, and people are getting caught doing things, that came about in the early 2000s. And we see from that, we have the Me Too movement.
Right.
And of course, a very notable exec comes to mind as we think about the Me Too movement and how that got started. But here's the thing, right? As I said, we're coming from a Christian background. And the Bible says that we are in the world, but we're not of the world. So there are elements, especially with the latter two waves, that we just can't agree with. You mentioned abortion, and I know that some feminism groups, they exclude people who are pro-life.
Wow.
And then a part of me is just like, well, wait a minute, if you're pro-woman, you should be pro all women.
Right.
But then that's when the agenda starts to reveal itself. It's just like, no, our agenda is to get rid of the family, right? And we'll talk about that in a little while. And you want to enhance the family. You want to keep the babies, and you want to protect. We're not about that. And you very much see it almost unravels itself. It's just like, is this really about women? Or is this about something and you're dressing it up as a pro-woman type of thing,
Right. So, and I agree with you. I think, you mentioned some of the good parts of feminism that I think, most women would say, yes, we want that right to vote.
Right.
We want that right to education and equal and fair wages. And the things that, like you said, the first to second wave was really advocating for and saying,
there were some weird parts about that too, but, but for the most part.
For the most part, it started, I want to vote. I have a voice, my thought counts. And I think, yes, we want the right to vote. You want to be able to make an informed decision about the governing bodies of the society that you live in. Right. So then my thing now is like, how do we compartmentalize the good parts versus the not so good parts of feminism? Because there's a whole lot of women caught up in this movement, and I don't think they fully understand that third and fourth wave, I think you said, are about.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They don't get it. They just, it is marketed as this thing that protects women, this thing that makes women feel like they have a voice and all of that. And parts of it, that's the thing. That's the thing with deception. It's always partially true.
Absolutely.
Right? The devil, the enemy did say, or the snake in the garden did say, is it? Or will you die?
Right.
And technically she wasn't going to physically die, but what he failed to tell her is that she's going to spiritually die. And a lot of things start off with this good intention, and then the enemy finds some way to just pervert it into something that, and as I said, the car had 2 people at first, and now there's people hanging off. A heap
of people.
hanging off the door, So what I think, how we compartmentalize it as Christians is that we have to put it up against the word, to the word of God, or we have to look at it from a lens of the word of God, right? So we have this radical viewpoint that I think we were alluding to earlier, where I believe that the reason why this thing has been pushed forth is to break up the nuclear family. I honestly believe that is.
I agree with that.
That is the core of it. Like when you strip back the layers, the goal is to break up the family, right? And
when you say nuclear family, sorry to interrupt you, just in case this is someone and you're just like, I don't know what y'all talking about. Like, what is the nuclear family?
The nuclear family is a man and a woman come together and they have children. I mean, in our neck of the woods, or in our purview, we believe that a godly woman should come together with a godly man, have godly children, so that we can have a godly society. That is what we promote as Christians. So, and we know that family is paramount to our faith, right? That is how children, as I said, we have this society, right? You and your husband came together. You have 3 beautiful children, and you're growing them up according to the word of the Lord. And with God's grace, they're going to be wonderful people of society who are going to know who God is and continue this thing that you and your husband started. And that is what we want, and that is what we believe in. So I wanted to point out to you, you don't have to believe me. You can go on the World Wide Web, and there is a document called the Declaration of Feminism. And this came about in 1971. And these are some thoughts or some comments from what we would call the mothers of feminism, or the women who really, were going after this thing. So these are just some comments from that, and you can look that up yourself. So they said that, here's a couple of quotes. It says it says that marriage exists to benefit men, right? The end of the institution of marriage is a necessary condition for the liberation of women. Therefore, it is important to encourage women to leave their husbands and not to live with men. All history must be rewritten in terms of the oppression of women, right? And there's some other things that also allude to replacing God with witchcraft.
Wow.
Right? And I mean, as I said, you don't have to take my word for it. It's called the Declaration of Feminism, and it's a document from 1971. And what we see is that this radical feminism tends to take on the extreme of not just trying to equal us to men, but almost putting women above men, right? And essentially trying to just get rid of men altogether. But on the other hand, we have something, and we're going to talk about this in a second, called biblical feminism, where we acknowledge the importance of women without dismantling the family,
right?
Or rejecting the value of men. And Lisa Bevere, we love the Beveres over here.
We love them.
But she has this book called Fight for Female that's coming out in a bit. By the time you hear this, it'll probably would have already been out. And she said something that was very important. She said the future, how you have that term, the future is female, and it became very popular, I think, when Hillary Clinton was running for office. And of course, she's just like, women in the White House now, all of that, and the future is female. And that is actually something that stems back from that 1970s era. So Lisa Bevere said, the future is female and male, because without both, there is no future.
Wow.
And I thought that was just like, yeah, it makes absolute sense. Like, if you don't have a male, then, it has so many consequences, and it's just horrifying sometimes. And you see how men are just kind of shying back because they feel like, I don't have a place, I don't have a voice, I'm not needed according to society. And it's just, I think it's the plan of the enemy to weaken males in our society. And if you have a weak male, then that's when, you think to yourself, when a man is not in the home, then that's when all hell breaks loose, I think.
Absolutely.
Right? The woman is sitting there bitter. The daughter doesn't understand the important, what it is to be treated well by a man. and the son doesn't know how to be a man, and it throws off the entire it just throws everything off. Right? And that's what the enemy wants to do. It's just like confusion. You have these broken people walking around, getting with other broken people, creating broken families. And it's quite opposite to what I said earlier, where it's just like a godly woman and a godly man get together, godly children equals a godly society. And it's obviously an attack on that concept, you know?
Yeah. And I just think, you know, no matter the science behind it, the surgery behind it, all the things that are being done to have male to female and female to male, you don't get that full experience as to what it is to be opposite of who you're supposed to be, who God has intended you to be.
Right.
You know, it's funny, I was watching this video on Instagram, and a lady is pregnant, and I guess they have these sensors that you, like, as labor pains, and she put it on her husband. Oh. So he can have a certain idea of what it's like to be in labor, and it goes from, like, say, 1 to, like, 5 being the highest in pain. And I think by level 2, he was screaming for dear life. Right. So all those things, all of that to say that, you know, there is a place for men, there's a place for women, and we need to stay in our places. And not say that, you know, there's not things we as women cannot do, but I just, you know, sometimes I do see what you're saying, where like the men are getting devalued, especially a lot in society with the genders and all of that. Right. But, you know, it's like, the saying that I don't need a man to do anything, I don't know. Like, we can do everything for ourselves. We can, and we can struggle.
We can struggle. I have no interest in changing a tire.
I was just about to say, there are things, and this is my, you know, for those that are listening, this is my
there are women who do it, and opinion. God bless you. God bless you.
I want you to hear me. This is my personal thought process that flat tire. Am I calling my mom? Are you calling your mom?
I'm not.
No, I'm calling my husband.
My mom is like, why are you calling me?
Well, I can't call CAA. She's saying, call CAA.
Call CAA.
Changing the oil? Are you calling your sister?
I'm not.
I'm not calling my sister, who cannot do anything for me in that moment.
Sister, I'm sorry.
I'm going to call my mechanic. I'm going to call my husband. I'm going to call somebody else. Just not any of them, because we going to be looking at each other like, how we pop the hood.
How do we do? No, I mean, there's some basic things that we understand too.
And I get it. And there are women that can change a tire, and I'm not knocking you. I'm not saying that, you know, hear my heart on this. But I think about, it's funny, I was having this conversation with Akeem the other day, and there's like, he was like, do you know women oil miners? Like, I guess that's what they're called. Do we know any women that are down there?
What that is?
Where they go finding the oil? Yeah. I don't know one.
I'm sure there's at least one. And I'm saying that this is not to put people...
Navy people?
Probably. More, maybe not oil, but Navy, I'm thinking.
I don't know. I just find that there's certain careers that are more male driven and based on the physical aspect of it.
Right. Go
ahead. Sorry.
So we know that, you know, men are, you know, stronger, like physiologically, like they're stronger. They have more muscle and all of that. Women are, I guess, you know, not as muscular. Well, physically, that is a fact. And there's some, I think, roles that would naturally appeal to a woman. I mean, I've seen male nurses and all of that, but predominantly it's very much a nurturing type of role. Right. And women are attracted to that. And I just think that this is not to put anybody in a box. Listen, no. If you want to be an oil miner as a woman or a nurse as a man, that is, please. If that is what you're called to do, then do it. However, there are just some things that I think are what women are called to do. And the crazy thing is, I'm here nervous to say stuff like that because our culture dictates a different thing, you know. But I know, and I'm very much a woman. I'm not interested in changing oil. I'm not interested in any of those things. I'm very much a homemaker type of woman. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a homemaker type of woman, that there's no condemnation. But I just think that God has designed us in specific ways so that we can fulfill specific needs, right? when you're at your home with your children, you and Akeem could be sitting there and they are going to pass Akeem. It's just like it's the woman. She needs to kiss this boo-boo. She needs to whatever, right? And they know instinctively that he can't help me with this. I'm gonna and you're doing stuff and he's sitting there watching TV and they're gonna pass him and come to you. And I've seen that. And I just think that instinctively we know that mommy's the nurturer. We know that if I'm in trouble, I need to go to daddy. Daddy's my protector. And they just know it even from a very young age, what we should be doing. And it's not saying that they don't come to you and Akeem doesn't kiss the boo-boos too, but it's just instinctual for them to be like, no, mommy does this better.
Right.
Or mommy is more apt to do this.
Or just even how I'm delivering it. The care is a lot different. But I think it goes back to your point of this, like saying the future, like the devaluing of men to the point that it could come across that, the whole movement is we don't need them. But as Lisa Bovera said, it's the best future is male and female.
Yeah, you need both.
We need both. But you also mentioned, the biblical perspective to feminism, which I kind of want to get back to. Can you speak more on that?
Right. So the biblical part, part of feminism acknowledges that there is a God-instituted order of authority, right? We see that in Ephesians 5:22-23, that, it's God, man, and the woman, right? And the man submits to God and then the woman submits to God, but as well as her husband. Right. And we see that is a design, that is the order. And even submission has become like a curse word, but submission, I was reading like what do you call it? What do you call those things? Commentary. And it was saying that the word submission does not mean that there's control. It means that this is a person who is meant to help and support her husband. That's really what the submission means. It's just like, I'm submitted to the mission that you have for our family, right? The man is supposed to, I was talking to one of our young people the other day. I'm just like, you need to find a closet because you need to talk to God because this person's about to get married. And I'm like, you need to find whatever your closet is, quote unquote, right? If you need whatever, but you need to hear from God so that you can lead your family. And the woman is meant to submit to that mission. And that's where submission comes from. It's just like, what did God say? Oh, you didn't hear anything? Go back in the closet. And we have to kind of have that way of thinking. It's just like, you need to get a word for our family. He's talking to the woman, of course, but he's talking to the woman about specific things for maybe other stuff. But as far as leading your family and where we're going next and what the vision is for us, he gives that to the man. Right. Right? And as women, we submit to that mission. And that's where submission comes from. But it's just become this weird curse word now. It's just like, oh, I'm not submitting. This is not for me. And as I was saying, that there are some things that are more male attributed. Like they would say men are probably a little bit more rational and women are a little bit more emotional. And that's not two things that oppose each other. That's two things that should work together. Right? It's just like there's sometimes, and I can admit this as a woman, my mind is crazy, especially that time in the month. I'm just like, your emotions are all over the place. And something would happen. And I think it is the most comfortable thing because even I live with my brother and I'd be like freaking out about something. And he's just like, no, just do this. And it's just very simple. Yeah. It's very like, why are you fussing? Like, what are you doing? Well, they say men tend to see black and white, right? Where we see blue, gray, we see all the yellow, colors. Orange. We see it in everything. And they're like, it's this or this. You're right. So, I love that part of me that can get a little bit emotional and maybe even to the point of being erratic. That I have men around me who are just like, oh, but it's. Just do this. Like, this is not really a problem, And I appreciate that. And it's supposed to work like that. It shouldn't be oh, you don't understand my feelings and, oh, you're just, I just want you. No, this is the solution to the problem. And when you get out of that emotional state, because I know when I'm in an emotional, I know when I'm like, usually that time of the month. And I know when I'm not in my right mind.
Yeah.
And I rely on my brother and maybe even other men to be like, oh girl, it's all right. It'll be fine, you know? And we just have those different things. And these qualities are meant to be, to show that we have unique strengths, and they're supposed to work together and not against each other. And I think that's where feminism gets it wrong. We want to combat them and, oh, I'm always rational. I'm just like, girl, you're not. I know you're not. You know, we have these things inside of us, and the emotions are fine because the emotions make us the nurturers. The emotions make us say, hold on, let's look at it from this angle and that angle. And even though you're black and white, I'm seeing the blue here, and I'm seeing the red here, and I'm seeing the pink here. And let's, you know, and it's supposed to be this beautiful almost dance between men and women. And it's just feminism tries to dispel that, you know? I think.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, just the fight of, you know, this is my body, I think has taken over so many good parts of the feminism, like of the feminism movement. And, you know, and I do probably need to read a lot more on this subject, but I'm going based on what the media shows a lot of and what we've heard in the protests and all these things is off of kind of that one point of the right to my body. And it kind of dissolves everything else that has been fought for over the years of when it first started of no, but we want fair wages. We want the right to equal pay. We want, you know, just as a female CEO, and I don't know the exact numbers versus a male CEO, the disparity in terms of the amount that's made is it tends to be a lot, you know, from doing the same job. So those are the things that I'm like, okay, let's not overlook off of this based on this one point that I feel like the world is caught up in with the feminist movement. And just like you were saying, like the balance, it is like, I can agree. I turn crazy. We get crazy sometimes, you know, we can be irrational with our emotions. And just based on, you know, our biological setup, we are more on the emotional side, emotional beings, right? And we need that rational person
that grounding,
that
you know?
To come and say, hey, slow down, think this through, you got this. Because it doesn't always come naturally to all of us, you know, right away, right? So I think there is such a need for both male and female in society. And I think it's being spiraled in a different direction.
Right. You know, and that third wave, as I said, it was very much, you know, anything you can do, I can do better type of stuff. And it's just like, girl, I don't need to do better.
Right.
You're right. I don't know. I have other things to think about, you know, but the plan of the enemy was always to distract and deceive us. And I think that third wave definitely has distracted us from what it initially started out as. And I believe that, and I've spoken to countless women who, especially women with young children, that they have to do the 9 to 5. And then they have to come home and be fully mom. Right. And then when the kids go to sleep, your husband is looking at you like, what's up, wife? Right. And then where is a time where you get to sit in your closet? You know what I mean? Right. And then there's just all of these things that we have to do. We have to, of course, you know, remain attractive for our husband. We have to have a skin routine, and we have to go to the gym, and we have to read a book every month. And it's just like, child, I'm tired. I'm tired.
I'm trying to get that 7-8 hours of sleep.
Right. You know, and I see, and I've heard, especially women who go on maternity leave, and we're so blessed in this country, we get up to 18 months. Most parts of the world, they only get 3 months. I couldn't imagine leaving a 3-month baby, you know, and we get up to 18 months, which is very much a privilege. But even at that 18-month mark, you're just like, I don't want, I know many women who were like, I just didn't want to go. You know, I didn't want to, like the work didn't seem as important as it is for me to be here and to see the milestones and to develop the child and to care and rear this child. Like the going back to work was, it felt like death to me. And it's just that this is not one woman. This is a lot of women have said that to me. And one of my coworkers said that, listen, when I was coming back to work after she had her second baby, she said that I thought to myself, this makes no sense. I'm going to pay for my child to be at a place for the entire day while I'm sitting in a whole nother building doing work. And then I get home. So I'm paying for this thing. I could be at home with my baby and I don't have to be here necessarily. But of course, now we need the money. We need 2 incomes in the home. Yeah. And then it's just like we've gotten to the point where we can't even go back. Like you need both of you to be working in order for life to work right now.
Right.
And, but then the kids could suffer because, they're going to these daycares. They're getting sick every 5 minutes, I hear. Like,
yeah, it's real. It's real.
And it's just like, it feels like you were almost duped. It's just like, I'm sitting here at this job and all I'm thinking about is my child. And if they're taking care of him at the daycare and if he's being nurtured, and it's just like, I'm the best person to nurture him, but I'm sitting at this job because I have to. And then all of this money that I'm making here is probably going to go out to be paying these daycares anyways. And it's just like,
yeah, it's expensive.
And she was just like, this is crazy. Like, why did we agree to this? Or why did we because we know that women probably more in the 60s, they were at home with their children.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, the 70s came along and that's when this thing really started to boost. And here we are stuck at this job. And all we have in our minds is, man, I should be home with my kids. And I know women who feel that way. And I'm just like, wow, I don't know. I don't know if we can go back now, So I don't know. How do you feel about that? You're a mom. You have young children.
I think I 100% agree to that in terms of, you have to work because society's expensive. Bills are expensive. Right. So it forces your hand almost, unless obviously financially you're in a different place or your partner's in a different place. Right. And not everyone is, I want to say, blessed where they have the financial means to be at home for the 18 months or longer until your child is in preschool or JK, right? So most of us find ourselves back in the workplace. And yes, your thought process is my child okay? Are they thriving where they are? Are they being taken care of? Are they safe? Right? And obviously we want to be home. Let me speak for myself. I want to be home. I've been fortunate and blessed to have jobs where I'm working from home. So I still kind of, I'm around with the childcare and to see that, things are going well. And my children have had my mother-in-law taking care of them.
Awesome, right?
Yeah. So, not every situation is my situation, but same thing. The women that I've talked to, they tend to either not go back to work or they find other careers that allow them that's more flexible. Right. So they're allowed to be in the home a little bit more or whatever the case may be to make it work because I think, it's so funny. Me and my sister, we kind of always talk about this. It's like, why are we fighting for the right to work? And we have kids and it's so hard and blah, blah, blah. But there are women that I get it that may not have kids and, work their career is their baby and they strive off of that, or they've had a child and their career is still very much
and
important.
That's fine.
That is fine. Okay. And I think, if, society could be different where it would allow that balance between you want the right to stay home. Okay. You want the right to work. Okay. And make it okay for everyone versus it has to be this way.
Right. You have to be boss this and child, forget it. It's okay. It's okay. So as we're wrapping up, do you know any powerful women of the Bible that you think would probably embody the biblical feminism that we were talking about?
There's so many fantastic women in the Bible that, if there actually is a woman like in the Bible type of Bible where it really highlights them. And, but when I think about it, I think about Esther,
Yeah, she was bad.
And Esther really fought on behalf of the Jewish people. So pretty much, long story short, God really used Esther. She was a young Jewish girl in a foreign land, and she was going to she did save the people of Israel. There had been a king that she was married to, and one of, I guess, his aides had kind of backhandedly said, hey, I think you should sign off on killing all the Jews and what and so forth, right? And not knowing his wife, who was Esther at the time, was of those people. He didn't know.
Right.
And basically he signed it with his ring, so it's established, it's put into full force. And she had to cry out to God on behalf of her people. And when I was reading it, and she's like, we need to fast. We need to pray and fast. And she called her, I think, was it her uncle or her cousin, Mordecai, and she was just like, call the people, tell them we're going immediately in prayer in a 3-day fast. And we need to fight for this. I'm going to go before the king, because at the time the king had to call you. And she wasn't called, and she's like, if the king don't call me, my head is gone. This is done, right?
Not your head.
Right. So she called, to be seen before the king without him calling her. So that was already no number one. And she pleaded on behalf of them.
Right.
And God just graced her with that. She was, the Bible talks about her beauty, but just even so much more her faith. And she fought her way through this and saved the people. Right. And then he came back and found out, it was his aide that, basically backhandedly got him to sign this. And then the aide it was drama.
It was a whole lot.
There's a whole story. Go find Esther in the Bible. It's in the Old Testament.
Who says the Bible isn't interesting?
A whole drama, right? But she really made her mark for her people, and I just think about how that's what, I think about when I think about feminism, to have a voice. And Esther displays having a voice, using your voice for the good.
And being graceful.
Right. For the good. But, that's just, a story I like to read about. What about you? Any sheroes in the Bible for yourself?
I love Deborah. I remember, because we have a Deborah at our church, and I did not know there was a Deborah in the Bible. So when I found out, I was like, Deborah, girl, you in the Bible? And she's like, yes. You know how Deborah is.
Yeah. It's like, my name is there. My name is there.
My name is in the Bible, but Deborah was one of the judges in Israel, and she was such a force, right? She had an impressive resume. She was a warrior. She was a judge. She was a poet, a prophet, a singer, songwriter. I just think that, she was a bad mama jamma. I think that's what true feminism is. It's just being strong, but being graceful and feminine while being strong.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and I also like that's a nice way to kind of end this podcast. But, once again, we just want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of Sis You Can Do This. Our hope is that within this conversation, we can see and we can agree that men and women are equally important, and they're important to God. God created us both. And he has not created us to be in competition with each other, but to complement each other. As we've mentioned, there's things that men do really well, and there's things that women do really well. We both have a place here. This was just great conversation. And I know there's so much more to this topic. And like you said, it could be very sensitive and touchy for some, but I'm glad we kind of surfaced it. And, if you have any thoughts on feminism and faith and how the two go together, or maybe you call yourself a feminist, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at sisyoucandothis@gmail.com. You can also comment or hit us up in the DMs on Instagram at sisyoucandothis. And don't forget to rate and share this podcast and leave a review. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in.
And remember, sis, you can do this.